Good evening. Welcome to the June 2023 meeting of the Board of Zoning Appeals. At this time, I'll call the meeting to order. We'll start off tonight with our prayer and our Pledge of Allegiance. If you will, please stand. I'm going to ask Phil to lead us in prayer and Scott to lead us in the pledge.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for the town of Smyrna, and we thank you for your continual blessings over our leadership, our staff, our first responders, and our residents. And we ask for your guidance during our discussions here today. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Excellent. Thank you, fellas. Next item on our agenda is citizen comments. I see none at this time.
That's correct.
Item number 4 is the approval of our minutes from our April 2023 meeting, which is our last meeting. Didn't have one in May, so if you have those minutes in your packet, they should be available for your review. Any additions or corrections?
Chairman, I've reviewed those minutes. I find them to be in order, and I move for their approval.
We have a motion to approve the minutes. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second from Scott. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Minutes have been approved. We got 3 items on our agenda tonight for new business, special exception and 2 setback variances. I think we'll start with the special exception, Orlando and Margarita Perez. Mitch?
Yeah, this is a special exception request at 207 Hager Drive for a detached accessory apartment. The applicant is wishing to convert a detached garage into an accessory apartment. The property is zone R1, which is low-density residential. It's about 0.4 acres in size. The applicant's intending to convert the existing detached garage into an independent livable space for familial purposes. It's also stated in the application that the intent is to not use the space for rental purposes. Section 7.060B of the zoning ordinance detail requirements for authorizing special exceptions. These are detailed below. Section 7.060 of the municipal zoning ordinance lists general requirements for a zoning variance request. Those requirements and staff findings are as follows. A conditional use permit shall be provided the board finds that it is A, so designed, located, and proposed to be operated so the public health, safety, and welfare will be protected. Staff finds the proposed use of a detached accessory apartment would not negatively affect the health, safety, and welfare of the public. B, will not adversely affect other property in the area. Staff finds the proposed use should not adversely affect other properties in the surrounding area. C, is located within provisions of special exception as set forth in the ordinance. Section 5.051.1C lists accessory apartments as a special exception within this district. D, conforms to all applicable provisions of this ordinance for the district in which it is to be located, as well as provisions cited in section 7.060 and 7.061. Staff finds that the site may be able to conform to all provisions of the municipal zoning ordinance as listed in criteria review section 7.060C. Criteria for review. Number 1, in regards to ingress and egress to the property. Access to the site will utilize the existing driveway off of Hager Drive. Off-street parking. Staff finds the lot would provide sufficient space for off-street parking due to the length of the existing driveway. Refuse and service areas. Refuse collection will proceed in the same manner as currently. For utilities, this location does have all the necessary utilities available at the site. Screening, which would not be applicable in this instance. Signs, if any, staff finds that the proposed detached accessory dwelling unit should fit the compatibility with properties in the same district in reference to the above effects. 7, required yard and other open space. Staff finds that the yard has necessary yard and open space as structure is currently existing. 8, general compatibility with adjacent properties and other property in the district. Staff finds that the use may not be compatible with adjacent properties due to other lots in the area not having a detached accessory apartment on the same parcel as the principal structure. Number 9 is not applicable in this case. In conclusion, staff finds that the lot would provide sufficient space to allow for a detached accessory apartment due to the structure already be existing on site as a garage. If approved, staff would recommend putting conditions on this request that the applicant be required to pay all applicable fees associated with an accessory dwelling unit, which would include the Rutherford County Development Tax, Town of Smyrna impact fees, code inspection fees, etc. Staff would also recommend adding a condition that the building not be used for rental purposes. So a couple pictures from the site. These were taken today. This is the existing driveway, so you can see the length is quite long compared to other newer construction buildings we have here going into town today. The structure is located right here in the back. That is in question. So just a closer look at that existing structure that would be officially then used for detached living quarters. Overhead image. So once again, this is just a location showing where that structure is currently located on the site. And you can see the driveway from an overhead view. And that's all I got.
Excellent. Mitch, have we had any calls from the community?
I have not.
None? All right. Any questions or comments for Mitch before we go to public hearing? Nope.
Is the building, how close is the building to the house? Do we know?
Don't know the distance to the house. It's just, it wasn't already an existing structure.
Okay.
Any others? All right, at this time, we'll close the Board of Zoning Appeals and open a public hearing for anyone who would like to speak for or against this request. If you'd like to speak, please come to the microphone. Yeah, you're certainly not required to. It's completely up to you. I'm sorry, if you could state your name and your address for the record, please.
Okay, Margarita Perez, the address is 207 Haggard Drive.
Thank you.
The reason why we wanted to rebuild this detached garage is just to help a daughter that is a single mom and is struggling at this moment. And she has a 5-year-old kid, which is at home with me right now. That's the only thing I wanted to point out. We do not plan to rent this at all. It's just for her, and it's always going to use for family purpose.
Perfect. Yeah, that would be one of the conditions that we would be concerned about is rental, so I appreciate you pointing out that you understand that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Not seeing anyone, we will close the public hearing, reopen the Board of Zoning Appeals for discussion. We have had several of these come through in the last few months. This is pretty much uniform and inconsistent with the others that we've seen. The fact that there's already existing building there kind of makes this one a little easier because there's not side setbacks and square footage concerns, all those things that we would normally have to consider because it's already there. So really it's just the use. The only thing I saw in the staff comments was that it may not be compatible with other properties, but that was only because they don't have a detached unit. They could add a detached unit and be fine. So I didn't see any concerns. The staff has recommended a condition that it would not be used for rental purposes, and of course, the applicant would be required to pay all applicable fees and taxes associated with adding an accessory dwelling. So that's kind of where we are. Any comments, concerns, questions from the board?
No, Chairman, I will move that we approve the special exception to allow the detached accessory apartment as presented, and including the conditions that the applicant will be required to pay all applicable fees associated with an accessory dwelling unit, and also the condition that the building not be used for rental purposes.
All right, well stated. We have a motion to approve with staff comments and conditions that have been outlined. Any second?
I'll second.
We have a second from Scott. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. None opposed, I assume? Yeah, okay, sorry. The special exception's been approved. Thank you. Mitch, next item on our agenda is the setback variances. The first one on the list is Ricardo Galvin, 111, is that Suzanne Street?
Yep, there we go. All right, so this is the first of the 2 setback variance requests. It is a front setback request for 40 foot to allow a fence in the front setback to the property line. The property is zoned R2, low-density residential, approximately 1.44 acres in size. The parcel is located at the end of a cul-de-sac, which naturally makes the front yard a pie shape due to the curvature of the front property lines around the pavement. Minimum front yard setback requirements in the R2 district is 35 feet for any structure. This lot, the subdivision was recorded back in 1974, so back then setback requirements were 40 foot rather than the current 35 feet. So thus the requirement that the applicant would have to adhere to is 40 foot rather than the typical 35 feet. The parcel lines have a normal cul-de-sac shape, however, the roadway was never constructed to the normal radius of a traditional cul-de-sac. So right now, we're looking at about roughly 40 to 44 foot for the width of this cul-de-sac. Other areas of this subdivision have a cul-de-sac width somewhere sitting around 63-ish feet, so significantly smaller of a cul-de-sac, but you still have the same parcel lines showing such. So this does leave a good bit of the front yard that is rendered essentially unusable, but is still grass space. So you're looking at about 35-foot length along the front property line to the actual pavement line on the edge of pavement, which cannot be used. There was an existing wooden split rail fence that has existed for years. The applicant replaced the wooden fence with a wrought iron fence in the same place due to maintenance purposes. Under the current zoning ordinance regulations, no encroachment on the front setback is allowed for fences except for corner lots. The ordinance was amended in 2002 to prohibit fences within the front setbacks. Prior to 2002, the fences could be located in the front setback without issue, which explains why other neighbors in the Davis Park Estate subdivision, and more than likely other older parts of the subdivisions here in town as well, do have fences located within their front setbacks. The fences on the applicant's property appear to have always been located within the right-of-way. However, at a minimum, the fence will have to be removed from the right-of-way as no structures of any kind may be built within the right-of-way. Code enforcement did notice the new fence and notified the owner of the current regulations and has submitted an application for a variance to keep a portion of the fence, however. Section 7.080D of the zoning ordinance detail requirements for variances not involving special flood hazard areas, and they are detailed below. For zoning variance requirements, section 7.080 of the municipal zoning ordinance lists general requirements for a zoning variance request. Those requirements, the staff findings are as follows. The board shall not grant a variance unless it makes finding based upon evidence presented as follows. The particular physical surroundings, shape, topographic conditions of the specific property involved that would result in a particular hardship upon the owner as distinguished from a mere inconvenience if the strict application of the ordinance were carried out must be stated. Staff finds that the property does have a unique shape in the front yard due to the parcel lines creating a pie-shaped front lot for where the cul-de-sac would traditionally be constructed. The conditions upon which the petition for a variance is based would not be applicable generally to other property within the same district. Due to the shape of the lot, construction of the roadway, and ordinance amendments, the conditions for the petition of this variance are not typical to other properties within the same district. The variance will not authorize activities in a zone district other than those permitted by this ordinance. Fences are allowed by right within this district, but are to adhere to all applicable provisions of section 3.180 of the zoning ordinance. Financial returns shall not be considered as a basis for granting the variance. Property owner has not identified financial returns as a reason for this request. The alleged difficulty or hardship has not been created by any person having an interest in the property after the effective date of this ordinance. The creation of the lot was not completed by the applicant. However, the fence replacement was completed by the applicant without knowledge of the ordinance requirements. That granting the variance request will not confer on the applicant any special privilege that is denied by this ordinance to other lands, structures, or buildings in the same district. Staff finds that the variance requested could potentially provide the applicant with special privilege denied by the ordinance to other lands, structures, or buildings within the R2 district due with a structure located in the front yard setback. The variance is the minimum that will make possible the reasonable use of the land, building, or structure. Staff finds that the requested setback variance may not be the minimum to make the reasonable use for the structure for the proposed use. The The fence could be removed to meet setback requirements. The granting of the variance will not be detrimental to public welfare or injurious to other property improvements in the area. Staff finds that the variance should not be detrimental to public welfare or injurious to other property improvements in the area. The proposed variance will not impair an adequate supply of light and air to adjacent property, substantially increase the congestion in the public streets, increase danger of fire, endanger public safety, or substantially diminish or impair property values. Staff finds that the variance would not have any of the above effects. Number 10 is not applicable in this case. In conclusion, staff finds that the property is unique, that is located on a traditional cul-de-sac shaped lot without the typical pavement found in a cul-de-sac. The previous wooden split rail fence on the property existed for years prior to the 2002 ordinance amendment that prohibited fences located within the front setbacks. In addition to current regulations state a setback for the R2 zone is 35 feet, but when the plat was recorded in 1974, the requirement was 40 feet. And at a minimum, the fence would be required to be removed from the right-of-way, but the applicant is requesting the structure to be placed at the front property line. So we're looking here is the picture of the fence today, coming out into the right-of-way. And then another picture showing proximity to the right-of-way, or proximity to the edge of parcel, rather. This is once again facing the house, looking at that fence again. In your packets, you did have additional pictures that were submitted by the applicant showing other lots within the subdivision of fences in the front setbacks, as well as what the previous fence looked like for the wooden split rail fence before the owner took that down. So here's an overhead image showing the rough location of the property lines here. So parcel in red here is the applicant's property. Right here is the corner of the property, and then you can see here faint outline of where a fence is located coming into the right of way. Traditionally, you'd have more pavement. It's hard to see on this picture here, but right roughly in this location is where that pavement width is. So there's a good bit over here and over here for where pavement would traditionally be located for a cul-de-sac, but in this instance it was never constructed as such, so just the way it was constructed, and it's the way it's remained for years. So that's all I got.
So, Mitch, one of the questions that we've been
Yeah.
looking, we've got several pictures up here. What is the right-of-way and where is it measured from? Since what you just said is the pavement footprint would normally be larger.
Yep.
So is the right-of-way measured from where the pavement is or where the pavement should have been, or what? If we want to let him come all the way up to the right-of-way, we need to know how much, right? How much off, and off of what?
So you can come up to the property line, the front property line essentially is where the request is for, because you'd have to come out of the right of way regardless. You can come up to the front property line, figure out through surveying and such exactly where that front property line
Okay,
is located.
so we
now.
wouldn't have to put a footage like we normally do. We didn't have to give a variance for a certain amount. We could just say up to the front property line.
If that's the way you decide to go, you could, or if you wanna, however many feet you decide to grant, if you wanna grant any, it's up to you. We can work with anything but having a survey done on the property which shows where those lot lines are at. We can go from there.
Gotcha, okay. Any other questions for Mitch before we go to public hearing? I have one more, Mitch. On the street view, Google Street View, the fence comes out another panel. So this picture's from today, right?
Correct.
Okay, so there's already been one section that's been removed from, at some point. Okay. All right, at this time, we will close the Board of Zoning Appeals and open a public hearing for anyone who would like to speak for or against this request. Certainly don't have to, completely up to you. If you will, state your name and address for the record, please.
Yes, sir. My name is Ricardo Galvan,
I'm Linda Galvan.
and Linda's my wife. We live at 111 Suzine Street, Smyrna, Tennessee. Been there over 35 years, and we love this area, and we're just trying to keep the community looking nice and clean and neat, and this reason I put that fence up there was because of the wooden fence I've already replaced 3 times. And I'm getting older, my back troubles are giving me trouble. So I don't know if I'm gonna be able to keep doing the wood fence. So I went out on the limb and, whew, them things are expensive.
Yeah.
And installed this, but in the same place where I had an existing fence, thinking everything would be hunky-dory. But come to find out later on, oh, some things have changed, and I'm like, uh-oh. So I've done something I need to go look into.
Yeah.
And that's why we're having this meeting here today. And I plead with everybody, if it's possible, if that thing's concreted in, it's gonna be hard for me to get out. I had removed one section of it, and it was rough. But it can be done, and I understand there's all kinds of codes and things that's been put in place. But I guess after we've lived here, I don't know. I know it's this an old subdivision, and I'm just trying to do a community a little bit of an upgrade, so to speak, without hurting my back anymore with that wooden fence. But I don't understand a lot about how codes work and everything. I did call in, however, to ask if there was anything that I need to be aware of in replacing an existing fence, and I was at that point in time over the phone explained, no, there's not. So I felt to my betterness of what I'm trying to do without a permit, I'm thinking, okay, I'm gonna do this right.
Yeah.
So I did, and I even had called in for all the gas line, water lines and all that, and did all the preliminary stuff, thinking everything was good. So been there now for about a year on the new fence. And we just got a letter in the mail stating that, you know, it's not supposed to be there now. So I'm like, okay. So that's why we're here at the meeting.
Okay. Any questions for the Galvins, anyone? Comments?
The new fence is beautiful.
Yeah, I
Thank you.
think the fence looks
Thank you.
great. Appreciate the upgrade.
It
Yes.
is.
And, we'll discuss it, but I think, I noticed you had taken down one panel that was just, before that one, it was pretty much right up to the road, so.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so
Yes.
I noticed you took down, are those panels about 8 feet? Is that what they are, about? or
It's 6 feet.
6 feet, okay.
16.
All
Yes,
right,
sir.
cool. Thank you very much, appreciate it.
Thank
Any, anyone else that would like to speak for or against this request? Not seeing anyone, we will close the public hearing, reopen the Board of Zoning Appeals for discussion. So we're kind of dealing with two things here, right?
Right.
We're dealing with the front setback variance as well as the right-of-way. So there's really two different pieces. We got some consternation there.
We
Mitch.
can't have any structure within the right of way.
Understand, yeah, I understand that completely.
Okay.
But my point being is the current ordinance says that the fence can't come past the front corner of the house. That ordinance was not in place when this fence was originally built, the wooden fence was originally built. And they are going back in the same spot where the original fence is. There technically is no grandfathering for residential properties. However, you can see why everyone would have assumed it would be okay to go back where the existing fence was. The second piece is it extending into the right-of-way, which no fence can extend into the right-of-way, and that's not a change. That's the way it always has been. The wooden fence probably did the same thing, but shouldn't have. So there's a couple of different things, right? The ordinance has changed. We can choose to do what we want with that, but the right-of-way is really not an option. The fence can't be in the right-of-way. I'm assuming that codes just saw this, just normal process, that do we have no complaints, no calls?
No, they were just driving around and noticed it was all.
Yeah,
It was
nothing
just,
from the neighbors.
it's obviously a big difference
It's been
from
there
what was
for years,
previous.
so it's not
Yeah,
somebody just randomly
right.
called.
Okay, so that's kind of where we are, is, the options are, the fence has to come down all the way back to the front of the house. Or the fence has to come back to the front property line, or somewhere in between. At a minimum, it's gotta be out of the right of way. And that's kind of where we are. So, and then that was the question I asked earlier about the right of way. The right of way is whatever the right of way is, so I think to identify that would be a survey and some measuring to figure out exactly where that point is. That could be 8 feet, 10 feet, I don't know what it is.
It's roughly 30-ish. It's in the range of 30 feet from the edge of pavement.
I got
In
you.
that ballpark.
So, yeah, so based on that, it's 3 or 4 panels probably at 6 feet panels, but, that's kind of give you a ballpark idea.
And Chairman, I think this is worthy of discussion because obviously we have an ordinance that's 20 years plus, and so we don't want to have people that, suddenly want fences in the front yard.
Right.
However, I think this one's absolutely proven to me at this point for discussion. We'll see what the rest of the board says. You're just replacing the existing fence. That fence has been there for decades. In this particular thing, I don't feel like it's a special privilege. So I think we're probably all dealing really with, I would think, allowing the fence up to as far as it can go to not be in the right of way. I mean, that's kind of what I feel like we're looking at. And that would be appropriate to me to grant that based on this particular situation and all of its facts. That's my opinion.
I agree.
So, as far as the right-of-way, and forgive me if this is an odd question, when I see the circle drawn on here of where the cul-de-sac should have gone out to, are we basing it off the asphalt that's there or what should have been there? Because it doesn't look like it was ever finished
We're
as
not-
far as right-of-way.
We're not basing it off of the pavement. It's just gonna be the parcel, the actual right-of-way,
layout
the
of the
parcel
parcel.
lines. That's what we're basing off of. It's just a anomaly during the construction. Obviously, back in the 70s, it was kind of, ooh, you did what you did back then, and that's kind of how this ended up. And it's just a really funky situation, what we got going on here.
Yeah, there should be a corner stop
Yeah.
right there at the corner of that front property line that a surveyor would be able to identify. And so that's really the point that it can go up to.
Okay.
Just like at your house or my house, although you cut all the way to the street, the first 10, 15, 20 feet, you don't really own. The city does, and they have the right to come in and do whatever they have to. They may have to dig it up to repair a water line, a sewer line, a gas line, and that's the reason you can't have things in the right of way. We can't be responsible for having to take the fence down and put it back up when we're trying to repair a water line or whatever. So that's the reason it's there. We all have it. The city ordinance requires that you maintain grass up to
Oh, yeah.
and including the right of way, even though you can't put structures in that right of way.
Right.
And so that's kind of where we're at. I don't know, I mean, I think Mitch's idea of it's around 20 feet, 24 feet, something like that is probably pretty accurate, but that's a guess. So I think if that's the way we're gonna go, we wanna be more factual, use a kind of a stake in the ground, so to speak, the front property line. Whatever that is, right, wherever that is. And I mean, again, it could be, based on that drawing, it could be not far back, or it could be halfway back. I don't know.
I mean, Jason, could an appropriate motion be made to say that we would allow a front setback variance to allow the fence and the front setback up to the right-of-way? Would that be a way to say that? Because you're not going to the property line, you're going to wherever the right-of-way is going to begin. Because we don't know a footage, so you really can't say that.
I'm kind of thinking that our motion here, if we were to allow it in the front yard up to the right-of-way, would be to allow for the 35-foot setback variance, right? Because we're basically eliminating the variance. I mean, the front setback, right?
Yeah, I think the motion is, I move to grant the variance as requested up to, but not including the right-of-way.
That's
Gotcha.
I'm thinking that's the best way, because that way it gives you as much fence as we can possibly give you, is what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
Give you everything you can have, so.
Yeah, and I mean, if you hadn't already had a fence there, I'm gonna be honest, this would be a totally different conversation. The fact that it's been there for 30-plus years is reason enough that the fence should be allowed to stay. If this was brand new with no previous fence, then it would be a complete violation of the ordinance and would have to come down, right? So.
Kind of like a grandfather clause.
We're treating it that way, although it's not really grandfathered, right? We're kind of treating it that way. No complaints from the citizens around you. Nobody's had any issues with it for up to this point. Probably your neighbors next door have been there probably less time than you, so they moved in with the fence there probably. So we're, that's kind of where we're going with it.
Yeah,
Anybody?
and just for the record, Chairman, if I might state, just so everybody's super clear, and you've already stated this, but just to be extremely clear, there is no grandfathering for any residential purpose whatsoever.
Right.
So,
That's understood.
All right. Any more comments, questions, concerns? or a motion? Nobody?
I'm just thinking, getting the words right in my head.
Jay's teasing us. He's gonna make a motion.
Yeah, just a minute. So I guess I'll make a motion.
Okay.
What's that?
Does you want? Okay. Make a motion to approve the front setback variance to allow a fence in the front yard up to, but not including the right-of-way.
Think that's good?
Second.
We have a motion to approve the setback variance up to the right-of-way and a second. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion is approved. Next item on our agenda is,
He has a question.
oh, I'm sorry.
Due to the fact that when I pull those panels out, is there any way that we can plant some shrubbery or like a?
Yeah, Mitch, I'll let you, officially in the right-of-way, I don't think you're.
This shouldn't be in
Yeah,
the
you're-
right of way.
You're not supposed to put anything in that
Nothing
right-of-way,
in there?
nothing, right. So, yeah, it's supposed to be clean, so, you know, we could come in and dig it up anytime if we needed
Yeah, I
to.
was told that before.
Yeah.
I didn't even know nothing about it when we purchased the home.
Yeah.
We like that fence there,
Okay,
but thank you.
thank you. The next item on our agenda is another setback variance for Richard E. Hurt at 8100 Bostic Drive. Mitch?
Yeah, this is another setback variance request, a front setback request for 32 feet to allow a detached carport along the front property line on Steen Boulevard. Property zone R3, medium density residential. It's approximately 13,531 square feet in size. The parcel is a corner lot located on the corner of Bostic Drive and Steen Boulevard. The minimum front yard setback requirement in this district is 35 feet for any structures. The proposed structure is to be 16 foot by 30 foot in size, which is 480 square feet, and placed upon an existing concrete pad. There is an existing shed in the rear yard, which is 80 square feet, and both of these structures will not exceed that 600 square foot maximum for detached structures on this lot, so we have nothing to be concerned about the exceeding detached square footage requirements, so we're all good in that. In addition, the applicant would like to construct a white vinyl fence around the carport. This fence would match the existing fence. Section 7.080D of the zoning ordinance detail requirements for variances not involving special flood hazard areas. These are detailed below. Zoning variance requirements, section 7.080 of the municipal zoning ordinance lists general requirements for a zoning variance request. Those requirements, the staff findings are as follows. The board shall not grant a variance unless it makes finding based upon evidence presented as it follows. The particular physical surrounding, shape, topographic conditions of the specific property involved that would result in a particular hardship upon the owner is distinguished from mere convenience if the strict application of this ordinance were carried out must be stated. Staff finds the property is uniform in shape, size, and topographic conditions with no unique circumstances. The conditions upon which the petition for a variance is based would not be applicable generally to other property within the same district. The property is a corner lot which does construct the rear yard for additional structures since the principal structure has two front setbacks to meet. The house is approximately 40 feet setback from the front property line, which further reduces any additional space for any buildings on the property. The variance will not authorize activities in a zoned district other than those permitted by this ordinance. Detached structures are allowed by right in the R3 zoning district, but are to adhere to all applicable front setbacks of the principal structure. Financial returns shall not be considered as a basis for granting a variance. The property owner has not identified financial returns as a reason for this request. The alleged difficulty or hardship has not been created by any person having an interest in the property after the effective date of this ordinance. The creation of the house and lot shape were not created by the applicant. That granting the variance requested will not confer on the applicant any special privilege that is denied by this ordinance to other lands, structures, or buildings in the same district. Staff finds that the variance requested could potentially provide the applicant with special privilege denied by this ordinance to other lands, structures, or buildings in the R3 district with a structure located within that front yard setback. The variance is the minimum that will make possible the reasonable use of the land, building, or structure. Staff finds that the requested setback variance may not be the minimum to make the reasonable use of the structure for the proposed use. The structure could be relocated, but would still not meet setback requirements due to the placement of the house on the lot. The granting of the variance will not be detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to other property or improvements in the area. Staff finds that the variance should not be detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to other property or improvements in the area. The proposed variance will not impair an adequate supply of light and air to adjacent property, substantially increase the congestion in the public streets, increase danger of fire, endanger public safety, or substantially diminish or impair property values. Staff finds that the variance may not have any of the above effects. Number 10 is not applicable in this case. And staff finds that the property is uniform in size and shape to other lots located within the R3 district. However, the parcel is a corner lot, which does create a constricted rear lot size for any detached structures desired by the owner. So this is taken from the corner intersection of the lot. So where the camper is currently located would be an approximate location of where that structure would be located. So really the applicants are already using this. They would just want to enclose this pad for the any use they have, whether it be for the boat or a camper, basically. So here's that fence that would then go out and enclose it. And then this shows an approximate location of where that would be located, and then you have those property lines sitting right there as well. That's all I got.
Excellent. Thank you, Mitch. Any comments, questions for Mitch?
Any calls from the neighborhood, anybody?
No, like I said, he's already really using it, so
Yeah.
just putting a cover on it.
Okay,
Shows
thank you.
What's going on?
All right. At this time, we'll close the Board of Zoning Appeals and open a public hearing for anyone who would like to speak for or against the request. Please state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Rick Hurt, and I live at 8100 Boswick Drive there. What I'm looking to do is just put a carport up. I don't know if it's going to be a aluminum or if we're going to build it out of wood yet. Kind of see what the prices are, you know. And then I'm going to put my boat under it because it's just sitting out in the sun, taking a beating. And then, unfortunately, my boat, some kids got on the boat and took some stuff that wasn't there, so I'm going to put that vinyl fence in. And I think the way that Mitchell explained to me on the phone was it's like 16 feet from the curb the city owns or whatever it is.
That's
So I'm
the
well
right-of-way.
past that.
Basically, the yellow line is pretty close.
That's the approximate location of the right of
Yeah,
way.
which-
Yeah, so we'll.
Which I
we're-
assume would be pretty much in line with the neighbor's fence.
Yeah,
Yeah, for
roughly,
the most
yeah.
part.
Yeah.
That's basically it, really. Just that, you know, we're not planning on moving anywhere, so.
Yeah.
And we did make the carport smaller. What was it? Because originally it was going to be 18 by 30. But my understanding was there was too many square footage in the yard, so we shrunk it down to 16 by 30. Because my boat's 25 feet, so
Yeah.
that
Okay.
way it'll fit under there.
All right. Any questions for Mr. Hurd? No? None? All right. Thanks, sir. Appreciate it.
Appreciate you.
I want to add for just additional informational purposes, the reason, so if he does bring that fence out, the reason this differs from the last one, so fences are allowed in the front setbacks in instances where we have a corner lot. So
Yep.
we wouldn't have an issue with his fence being brought out any. It's only for the way the house faces that area, so
Yep.
his side yard right there, so long as he stays outside the 75-foot setback from the center point of that intersection,
Yeah,
we're
it's
all
a-
good on it.
It's
so.
essentially the same thing. He
Yeah.
can't be in the right of way, and he can't extend past the front of the house. The front of the house is actually facing Bostic and not Steen.
Correct, so that's why he can come
Yeah.
out towards the right of way in that setback, yep.
Gotcha. Also, looking at this lot, I mean, we have these come in pretty regularly. Hang on a second, I don't think I closed the public hearing.
Go ahead.
Let's close the public hearing and reopen the Board of Zoning Appeals. We have these come in pretty regularly, these corner lots. Obviously, there's a little bit of a hardship there that they have double front setbacks basically from both streets. So they have 35 feet usually or 40 from each side. In addition to this house is kind of positioned, kind of tucked into the back corner on the left side of this house. If you're facing it, there's only 6 or 8 feet of space. There doesn't look like a whole lot in the backyard either. There's really not anywhere else that this could go on the lot and still be usable. So no matter where he put it, I think he would have to have some sort of variance, even if, except for possibly, well, even right behind the house, I don't think it would fit. You'd have a back property line there to deal with. So I think this is the most reasonable place for it. You know, he's already got a concrete pad there. The pictures, you know, it doesn't look out of place. It's not extruding past the neighbor's house to the point where it's obstructing view or creating an eyesore. Extending the fence out to surround it, it actually will hide the camper or boat or whatever item he puts in there more than it is today. So it actually would improve potentially the street view, in my opinion. So
Yeah,
that's
Chairman,
kind of what I'm seeing.
I agree. I find, especially with all the facts today, that there is definitely a hardship with having the double front setback. There's a constricted rear lot size for detached structures, so I think that is the most reasonable place. Therefore, I will move that we approve the front setback variance of 32 feet to allow a detached carport along the front property line on Steen Boulevard as presented.
We have a motion to approve the setback.
Second.
And a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion has been approved. Last item, second item, our second to last item is staff comments or other business. Do we have any tonight, Mitch?
I'm all good tonight.
All right, with no other staff comments or business, we will stand adjourned. Thank you.
Really appreciate y'all putting in such nice fencing, everybody.
Yeah.
That's really nice, thank you. I mean, just really does bring up.
I don't understand.